evening. Welcome to the Deep Dive. The date is March 3rd, 2026.
Thank you for joining us. Tonight, our reporting is focused entirely on the cyber domain.
The intelligence briefing we are unpacking for you is titled Digital Battlefield Expands. Russia, China, and AI Reshape the Global Threat.
And before we begin parsing this data, we would like to acknowledge our sponsor, ProWave AI, for making this deep dive possible.
We also want to be fully transparent about our sources. The intelligence driving this analysis is generated by Stylo News, an AI-powered news application.
Right. And for context, Stylo News is the consumer version of the Stylo Intel Ops software,
Which is the exact enterprise-grade system utilized by government, military, and corporate operations globally. So you are getting access to the exact same tier of situational awareness that global decision-makers rely on.
Our mission for this deep dive is to analyze the primary patterns of cyber events over the past 2 weeks.
We will examine the impacts from the local to the international level, identify the perspectives of key decision-makers, and present the facts with absolute neutrality. We are here to report, not to take sides or generate fear.
Exactly. We are looking at a landscape where the traditional boundaries of conflict are dissolving very quickly.
So let's start with the immediate physical threats. Looking at the European theater, the prevailing pattern in the reports is labeled critical infrastructure under siege.
Yes, and if you look at the data clusters coming out of Poland, Germany, and Denmark, you see a highly coordinated wave of activity. Let's look at Poland first.
The reports detail a recent series of destructive malware campaigns there. Who exactly is behind these, and what was the primary target?
The intelligence attributes these attacks to Russian-linked groups, specifically actors known as Sandworm and Berserk Bear.
And Sandworm is a familiar name in these reports, aren't they?
They are. They have a documented history of targeting power grids in Ukraine. But this time in Poland, they targeted over 30 renewable energy sites.
30 sites, that is a significant volume. Is there a strategic reason to target renewables specifically?
Well, renewable sites, like wind farms and solar arrays, are highly decentralized. They rely entirely on remote management software to balance the load they feed into the grid.
So they are effectively softer targets than a centralized nuclear plant.
Precisely. If you compromise enough of those decentralized management nodes simultaneously, you introduce chaos into the frequency of the broader energy grid. It is a massive stress test.
And the reports indicate they didn't stop at the power grid. Warsaw University's IT infrastructure was also severely compromised.
Right. When you combine energy disruption with the crippling of a major national research institution, you are looking at a campaign designed to disrupt basic societal normalcy.
Which brings us to Germany. We see a similar intent there, but applied to a completely different sector. The data shows a massive DDoS attack against Deutsche Bahn.
Yes, the National Railway.
Huh.
And for those who might not be familiar with the terminology, DDoS stands for Distributed Denial of Service.
Basically flooding a network with fake traffic until it collapses.
Exactly like causing a massive traffic jam on a highway so that no real cars can get through. That is what happened to the railway's digital logistics network.
But I want to clarify something here. The trains themselves run on electricity and physics. Did they actually stop moving on the tracks?
Physically, no. The trains could still operate. But the digital backbone, the ticketing systems, the scheduling coordination, the platform displays, all of that went completely dark.
So the logic of the system was broken.
Completely. And that is a psychological weapon.
Yeah.
It signaled to the public that the state cannot ensure the smooth operation of daily infrastructure.
Speaking of psychological impact and physical security, the situation in Italy is particularly striking. We are looking ahead to the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milan Cortina.
This is perhaps the starkest example of the convergence between cyber and kinetic threats. A pro-Russian group, known as 057, launched a series of attacks against the Italian Foreign Ministry and the Olympic venues themselves.
But the Italian response wasn't just to deploy more digital firewalls.
Not at all. Italy deployed 6,000 physical security personnel to these venues. The reports specifically highlight the inclusion of snipers and bomb disposal experts.
Snipers responding to a computer threat? That feels entirely asymmetrical.
It does, until you recognize that a cyber threat to a massive physical event is inherently a kinetic threat.
Right. If a hacker disables the electronic locks or manipulates the stadium power or crowd control systems during an event, that is a severe physical safety issue.
Exactly. The Italians are essentially treating the digital defense of the Olympics as a military operation.
Which leads us to the decision makers. How are governments fundamentally adapting to this environment? Because relying solely on an IT department clearly isn't sufficient anymore.
We are seeing sweeping policy shifts. Look at Denmark, for instance. Their government is moving toward a system they call total emergency preparedness.
Total preparedness. That sounds very much like a Cold War doctrine.
It does, but it's been updated for the modern threat landscape. Denmark is allocating 1.2 billion Danish krone to dismantle traditional operational silos.
Meaning the water company no longer operates in isolation from the rest of the country's infrastructure.
Exactly. Historically, utilities protected themselves, hospitals protected themselves. But Denmark is recognizing that if the water pumps are hacked, the hospital fails.
So everything is linked.
Everything. They are integrating drone monitoring, utility defense, and health services into one collaborative cross-sector command structure.
We are also seeing new international alliances forming around this concept. Germany is reportedly negotiating with Israel.
Yes. On the Cyberdome initiative, Germany is looking to utilize Israel's automated detection technology to shield its infrastructure. It is conceptually very similar to Israel's Iron Dome missile defense, but designed to intercept malicious data packets instead of rockets.
And Sweden just signed a 5-year cooperation agreement with Ukraine.
Which effectively functions as capacity building.
Yeah.
Ukraine has arguably the most extensive combat experience in cyber warfare right now. Sweden is looking to integrate that intelligence.
All right, so that outlines the very loud, physically disruptive front in Europe. I want to pivot now to the Asian theater. The intelligence paints a very different picture there.
Much quieter, yes. The primary pattern we are tracking in Asia is state-sponsored espionage. It is a long game.
The major revelation comes from Google's cybersecurity division. They identified a network known as UNC2814, also referred to as Gallium.
The scale of Gallium is quite staggering. This is a Chinese-backed network that has been operating since at least 2017.
And they aren't targeting train schedules or wind farms?
No. They are targeting telecommunications and government entities across 42 different countries.
42 countries. That is a massive operational footprint.
It is. They're sitting quietly on these networks, mapping relationships and extracting data. The goal here isn't disruption, it is pure information dominance.
Which is understandably escalating regional tensions. The armed forces of the Philippines have been issuing very clear warnings recently.
Yes. Warnings regarding escalating cyber threats from China-based actors specifically operating in the West Philippine Sea. Cyber espionage is becoming a standard, non-kinetic tool in territorial disputes.
You don't necessarily have to send a ship to the border if you can send a virus to map their naval communications.
Precisely. And the region is acutely aware of the threat. Look at how Japan is responding. The Kanto Region Police recognized that suspicious access attempts have doubled since 2019.
And they are facing a severe talent shortage in cybersecurity, like many nations.
Right. So instead of just relying on traditional recruiting, they organized a massive Capture the Flag competition to train the youth.
And to be clear, for anyone unfamiliar with the term, Capture the Flag in this context is a gamified hacking simulation.
Exactly. Teams compete to find vulnerabilities and secure data. Japan is essentially gamifying national defense to cultivate a new generation of digital defenders from the ground up.
It's a fascinating approach. But the espionage issue also bleeds into consumer hardware, which brings us to a major legal controversy. The state of Texas is currently suing TP-Link.
This is a critical development. TP-Link manufactures routers that are sitting in millions of homes and businesses right now.
And the allegations from Texas are incredibly serious. They are asserting that these routers enable Chinese state-sponsored surveillance.
Not only surveillance, but Texas alleges the hardware has been utilized in botnet attacks.
Let's define a botnet for our listeners. If I have one of these routers in my living room, what does that actually mean for me?
It means your router could theoretically be remotely commandeered to join a network of compromised devices. You might just notice your internet is running slightly slow.
But in the background, my router is participating in a coordinated attack.
Yes, sending malicious traffic to a target like the German railway we discussed earlier. Your hardware essentially becomes a silent weapon in a broader conflict.
Now, we must emphasize that TP-Link categorically denies these allegations.
Yes, they have stated they are not under the control of the Chinese government and are actively defending against the lawsuit.
But regardless of the legal resolution, it highlights a fundamental vulnerability regarding hardware trust. Can we definitively trust the physical devices acting as the gatekeepers to our networks?
It is a question every organization and individual has to grapple with now.
Which brings us to the core engine accelerating all of these trends. We titled this portion of the deep dive The Double-Edged Sword, focusing on artificial intelligence.
AI is the ultimate accelerant here. It is fundamentally altering both the volume and the sophistication of these threats.
The statistics from India really underscore that volume. The reports indicate over 3,100 weekly AI-driven cyber attacks.
Over 3,000 a week. And they are primarily targeting the education and government sectors.
You simply cannot generate that volume with human operators typing on keyboards.
No, that is automated algorithmic aggression. And education sectors are particularly vulnerable because they hold vast amounts of personal data, but often lack the security budgets of financial institutions.
And it isn't just about brute force. The sophistication is increasing exponentially. We saw a 500% surge in click-fix malware in Sweden.
Which is a brilliant and terrifying use of social engineering.
How exactly does the AI component work in that scenario?
In the past, phishing attempts were often easy to spot poor grammar, strange formatting. But now, AI can generate a highly convincing, localized error message on a user's screen.
And then it provides the user with the supposed solution.
Exactly. The AI drafts perfect, helpful-sounding instructions on how to fix the error, which actually tricks the user into manually executing the malware themselves.
We saw a very similar tactic with the Figure technology breach in the US, where social engineering was used to ransom highly sensitive client data.
Right. And in Ukraine, the reports detail a significant rise in the use of deepfakes AI-generated audio and video, impersonating military or government officials to spread disinformation.
But AI is not exclusively an offensive weapon. We are also seeing it deployed as a highly effective shield.
Absolutely. The U.S. company Anthropic recently launched Claude Code Security.
And the claim is that the system can detect software vulnerabilities at a fraction of the time it takes a human analyst.
It is totally disrupting the traditional cybersecurity market. It can ingest massive amounts of code and identify structural flaws almost instantly.
And the European market is responding to this capability as well. Mistral, the French AI giant, is making multi-billion-dollar investments in Sweden.
Which is a clear signal that Europe is pushing for AI autonomy. They recognize that relying entirely on foreign AI infrastructure for national defense is a strategic vulnerability.
However, looking at the social sentiment data provided by Stylo, the general public seems quite skeptical of these massive investments in AI defense.
The frustration is very palpable. You can look at the recent breach of the French tax authority, the DGFIT.
Right, where 1.2 million taxpayers had their sensitive information compromised.
Exactly. The public sentiment essentially boils down to, if governments are spending billions on advanced AI shields, why are data custodians still failing to protect basic taxpayer information?
It's a completely valid frustration, which transitions us perfectly into our next segment, vulnerabilities in everyday technology. We discussed routers, but the automotive sector is facing intense scrutiny.
Yes, specifically regarding research out of Northeastern University concerning Tesla's Model 3 and Cybertruck.
The researchers identified a flaw where physical access to the vehicle allows an attacker to gain complete administrative control.
Now, Tesla has acknowledged the finding, but their stance is that the requirement of physical access inherently limits the practical risk.
Which makes sense on one level. If a criminal has physical access to a traditional car, they can just break the window and hotwire it.
True, but a modern electric vehicle is essentially a massive rolling computer. If someone hacks the administrative system, they aren't just stealing the car. They potentially have access to your synced communications, your location history, your payment data.
The risk profile is vastly more complex than simple grand theft auto, and regulatory bodies are stepping in to address this.
They have to. The EU and South Korea are officially mandating comprehensive vehicle cybersecurity certifications by 2027.
So, similar to passing an emissions test, a vehicle will have to pass a digital security audit to be considered street legal.
Exactly. But it isn't just high-end automotive tech that is vulnerable. The reports highlight significant risks at the local government level as well.
The Cape Fear scams in North Carolina are a perfect example. Municipalities like Pender County and Carolina Beach suffered over $1 million in losses.
And this wasn't a sophisticated, AI-driven zero-day exploit. It was a failure of basic cyber hygiene.
Just standard business email compromise.
Yes. Bad actors impersonate a vendor, request a change in banking details, and the funds are wired directly to the criminals.
We are seeing similar warnings issued in Ireland right now to the Louth County Council officials.
They are being flagged as high-value targets ahead of the EU presidency. The The takeaway here is that local governance is fully on the front lines.
Before we move to our final outlook, there is one detail from Russia regarding everyday tech that I want to discuss. They are formalizing USC standards for smart home devices.
Right, specifically targeting the interoperability and security of IoT, the Internet of things like connected water and heat meters.
Why is the Russian government focusing national standards on household water meters?
Because of the aggregate risk. Think back to Denmark's total emergency preparedness. If an adversary compromises 10,000 smart heat meters in the middle of winter, they can cause massive infrastructure damage to the residential grid.
So Russia's essentially classifying smart home appliances as critical national infrastructure.
Exactly. They are trying to mandate security at the manufacturing level to close those vulnerabilities.
All right, as we look ahead, what are the key developments our listeners should be watching for in the coming weeks?
From a regulatory standpoint, watch the UK's upcoming Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, as well as the enforcement of the NIS2 directive in the EU.
Governments are moving from issuing guidelines to enforcing strict compliance and penalties.
Exactly. Also, keep a close eye on the India AI Impact Summit 2026.
The reports mention they have activated a G20-grade cyber shield for the event.
Yes, it will be a highly visible, real-world test of state-level AI defensive capabilities against live threats.
And geopolitically, what is the primary indicator to watch?
I would monitor the Talon mechanism. This is a collaborative funding effort heavily supported by Italy right now, designed to build civilian cyber capacity in Ukraine.
And we also need to track the Russian espionage statistic.
Yes. Currently, 37% of their total tracked cyber attacks are focused purely on espionage and data gathering. If that percentage shifts significantly, it often indicates a change in broader strategic intent.
As we wrap up this deep dive, there is a common thread running through all these reports that I want to present to you, the listener, as a final thought.
It really stands out when you look at the totality of the data.
We talked about Denmark shifting to a total defense posture that involves civil society. We discussed Japan relying on citizens in capture the flag events, and Russia regulating the security of basic home appliances.
The overarching question is about responsibility.
Exactly. Are we entering an era where cybersecurity is no longer just the responsibility of an IT department or a military cyber command? Has maintaining basic digital hygiene, securing your router, updating your passwords, not clicking malicious links essentially become a modern civic duty?
It is a profound question. If a compromised home router can be weaponized against a national railway, then the perimeter of national defense effectively runs right through your living room.
It is certainly something to mull over as these technologies become even more integrated into our daily lives.
Absolutely.
And if you want to explore these topics further, we highly recommend utilizing the tool that made this analysis possible.
Yes, the Stylo News application.
It is a mobile and desktop app that you can download right now. It allows you to customize your own personal intelligence-style briefs.
It aggregates data from hundreds of traditional news sources, as well as real-time updates from X, and uses enterprise-grade AI to distill the facts.
So it empowers you to have the exact same level of situational awareness that we have utilized for this deep dive. You can subscribe and get AI-powered news on demand by visiting www.stylonews.com.
It really is an invaluable resource for navigating this kind of complex information space.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. We know these subjects can be intense, but understanding the landscape is the best way to navigate it securely.
Thank you, everyone.
If there is a specific topic or region you would like us to analyze in a future deep dive, please let us know.
We always appreciate hearing what is most relevant to you.
You can request topics and stay updated by following Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms. Have a wonderful evening and stay informed.